Welcome to the Lifescript Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sonu. The Lifescript Podcast is on a mission to uncover what health truly means and give insight into my unique, evidence-based health philosophy I call your Lifescript. The Lifescript Podcast aims to empower you with thought-provoking discussions with leading medical professionals and wellness experts and how it ties into your Lifescript. Together, we discuss the rapid rise of chronic diseases and mental health conditions and how our lifestyle, our emotional health, and the core medicine all intertwines to give you the best health for life. Please be aware that this podcast is not intended to diagnose, treat, or provide individualized medical advice for any health conditions. If you're seeking tailored support, you can explore more on my website, drsonu.com.au. That's drsonu.com.au. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hi, welcome to another episode of the Lifescript Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sonu. Today's topic is called The Science of God. I often say to my patients, let's put God, food, sex, exercise back into mainstream medicine because all of those factors affect our health and healing. Today, though, in this episode, I want to talk about the science of faith, belief, spirituality, God, universe, however we relate to our own existence, to our mortality, our coordinates in the universe, how that affects our health and healing, and what is the science behind it. Someone asked me recently, what was the main thing? If there was one thing I had to pinpoint from my year's experience of a sabbatical, what is the single most factor do I believe affect our health and healing the most? And surprisingly, when I thought deeply about this, I came up with the answer that it was spirituality. It is our faith, it's our hope that determines our health, our trajectory of health, and our healing. To me, as a scientist, that surprised me a little. It challenged me, but I was very confident with that answer that the number one factor of my Lifescript wheel, the 9 working parts of that wheel, spirituality is probably the most important thing. It goes to the heart of our belief system, our faith, our hopes, our coordinates in the universe. So it is our very core stamp that defines us, that defines how we relate to things around us. And I say to my patients, what is your spiritual framework? And sometimes they look back at me blankly and say, what do you mean? And when I say, what is your attitude towards aging? What is your attitude towards death? What is your coordinates in the universe? How do you relate to the universe? And then I ask them, how do you celebrate that? How do you ground yourself? What takes you back to that being just you, being that soul alone, human being that's being born alone and is going to go alone? What is it that grounds you to that reality? And, the answers I get are quite intriguing, sometimes unexpected for the patient and the individual themselves, and for me as the doctor. So the concept of mortality is so significant to us in our day-to-day lives, and it is linked to the idea of gratitude, of mindfulness. And every time I walk on the beach now, I feel like this is one less time I'm going to see the ocean. And it's not a morbid thought. I think it's more a gratitude thought. It's more a mindfulness. So our spiritual framework, I think, is directly linked to our uh, uh, feeling of gratitude and mindfulness. And we all need to be very aware and linked to our spiritual framework. And we have to understand what is it that we do, the actions we do to link back to our spiritual framework. What are the things that we feel are linked to our spiritual framework? For some of us, it may be praying, traditional, praying, following your religion, praying to God, going to church or a temple, or rituals that are associated with it. For some people, it is following a guru or saint or a teacher or someone that they believe in their ideology and philosophy. For someone, it may be just meditation, just being connected to their state, their breath, their body, that core life force that connects us to the magic of universe and our life itself. And for some people, it could be creativity. I often find patients link their spiritual framework to their creative outlet. If they're dancers or singers or musicians or painters, they relate their spirituality to their creative outlet. And when I ask them, what do you do to practice it? Some of them would say, oh, I dance, or I paint, or I write. So whatever that is, I think is very unique to an individual. What my research has found, that understanding that spiritual framework and practicing it is an integral part of our health, well-being, and healing. And we need to call upon it not only when we're faced with difficult circumstances, when we have difficult diagnoses, when we have had trauma or injury, or we diagnosed with cancer, but also in our day-to-day lives. So we can respect the life force, we can respect our lives, and we can do those things, we can make those choices that help us lead our lives in a healthy way, that help us prevent disease, that tells us that we're going to take this physical body to our last day in style, with respect and gratitude and mindfulness. So I just thought that I would touch base on the science of God, why that is important. And there is a lot of research. The Current Wellness Program, the Lifescript Program, is about evidence. So now we have evidence that faith, hope is significantly important in our well-being, in our mental health. One of the first books I read on my trip to New York last year that started my journey was a book by Lisa Miller. She is one of the top psychologists at a big mental health hospital in New York, and it's called The Awakened Brain. And she researches the impact of spirituality or spiritual practices on the health and well-being of the patients who are inpatients in the mental health hospital. So, and the study invariably proves that people or patients who practice spirituality and rituals and religion were likely to have much better outcomes in their mental health than those who did not. So, it kind of proves what we knew for centuries. Faith, religion, spirituality is a huge part of our well-being. And the other end of my trip, when I was in India and I visited a temple in Shirdi, Sai Baba, he's got millions of followers all over the world. And I saw the power of faith, of that sense of belonging, looking up to a teacher and their sayings, and just having that core value systems in your life by which you govern your life, and you get rid of that fear of death and dying and mortality. How powerful that is, and how it brings communities and people together. And the two words that were everywhere in his temple were Shraddha and Saburi. Shraddha means faith, and Saburi means patience. And so often those two words are just the two words you need to get out of any complex state of mind or situation. So you've got to have faith, you've got to have belief in the power of the universe, and that comes to spirituality. And you've got to have patience. So you've got to let things roll. If you're waiting for the rain to stop, you've got to have patience. If you're waiting for the sun to come out, you've got to let the night pass. You're waiting for a dark thought to pass, you've got to have patience. So patience is a virtue that we don't talk about enough in the modern world. We want it now. We don't want to wait. But those two words, Shraddha and Saburi, are now my guiding principles. And when I'm in a sticky patch in my life, at work, personally, professionally, I can come back to those two key virtues, and it works. It is something that you have to remind yourself, that having faith and having patience and acceptance. I was talking to one of the psychologists I highly respect, and I asked her, if I talked to you about something, what is it, the one thing you would love to talk about? And she said, acceptance. And I think acceptance is kind of the same as patience. You accept and you be patient and you let the forces of the universe flow. Lot of research in cancer patients as well, in palliative care, around spirituality and healing. I just wanted to talk to you all about the science of God and how it's an important aspect of the way we live our lives, the choices we make, and hence that influences how healthy we are, and how we heal, and how we recover from difficult diseases and traumas. So this is Dr. Sonu signing off, and this is the Lifescript Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to the Lifescript Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. The show notes and any resources mentioned can be found in the accompanying blog post on my website. Please remember that the information provided in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or provide medical advice for any health conditions. If you're looking for individualized support, please head over to my website, drsonu.com.au. That's drsonu.com.au to learn more about how Kiran Wellness and its programs can help you on your health and healing journey.